What's the most messed up thing a friend has done to you? One of my best friends needed a roommate at her apartment, and my other friend begged me to move in with her. We'll call him Alvin. I was skeptical but had my faith in him after he promised to never screw her over with his actions. 6 months later, Alvin started bringing his dumb homies over and started snorting jars of hard substances daily as well as push grass out of the apartment. A couple months after that, my best friend said she was suspecting Alvin of going into her room and snooping through her stuff. Another 2 months later, Alvin gets arrested for attempting to break and enter into a vehicle. As I offered to drive him to court since he didn't have a car, he confessed to me that he would regularly break into cars at night, steal stuff, then sell it all on Craigslist. Apparently, selling grass didn't cover his Xanax dependency completely. I was pretty upset and made him promise to me to stop stealing before he went inside the courthouse. 2 weeks later, I called Alvin to hang out. When I arrived at Alvin's apartment, no one answered the door. I went around into the alley next to the building, and sure enough, he was running towards me. As I walked towards him to greet him, he ran past me into his apartment complex, locking the door behind him. I looked further down the alley and realized there were 3 kids running after him. Turns out, Alvin saw the kids walking to a liquor store and tried taking one of their bikes. The kids were apparently Crips, so when they found Alvin trying to pedal away, they punched him, then pulled a weapon on him. So Alvin leaves me with 3 Crips. I knew that running away wouldn't solve much, so I just approached them, apologized for Alvin's stupidity, and told them that I would deal with Alvin myself. They appreciated me not running away, and I treated them to dinner. After that incident, I haven't seen Alvin at all. I think he avoids me, though, because I told his friends that if I see him again, I would enforce some regulation on him. Screw that kid. Story 2. I've been fairly lucky, I guess. Most of my stories were from grad school, like a best friend turning on me, but who wants to hold someone to what they did at 12, nearly 30 years ago? For a while, I had lots of friends who made it what I called ornamental promises. Like they would say they would do something only because it made them look good at that moment, without any follow-through. The only one that sticks in my head was this friend who I knew was an author because she knew me from science fiction conventions. I used to do humor readings and stuff. "You have to come to my party," she said. "You just have to entertain my guests." She promised me a lift back home if I stayed late. Okay, sure. This was in 1991 or so, way before cell phones were ubiquitous to all by the privileged few. I had no car at the time, so I had to take a bus to take a subway to take a bus to their house. Nearly 2.5 hours to get there. I ended up in an artsy suburban neighborhood with no streetlights and lots of trees. The street signs were black text on brown and almost impossible to read, and her directions were wrong. But using a little bit of logic, I found her house, which was about a mile further than she said it was. I go to the front door and knock. The door creeps open, no one is at home. I check and recheck the house number and street, and nobody's there. Why was the door ajar? I call out into the house, no answer. I step into the living room, and the place is a mess. Looked like a crime scene. Candles are still lit and the radio softly playing light rock. Finally, pissed off, I leave. I take a bus to the subway and the last bus home does not show up. I have to take a cab, and have just enough to get a block away from my house and I have to leave the cabbie with no tip. Later, when I saw her, I asked, "What the hell?" She said, "Oh, well, the party got started and then someone said, let's all go have ice cream, so we all went out to Baskin-Robbins and then decided to see a movie. I forgot you were coming." Oh well. Story 3. For me, it was this girl I knew back when I was a teenager. We met and got close instantly. We were friends for maybe a year. Best friends, I guess. Then one day she phones me up in tears saying she doesn't know where she is or what's going on. She was approached by some man who was threatening her somehow, shoved a cloth over her and she passed out. When she woke up, she was somewhere she didn't recognize. Managed to escape and was completely hysterically phoning me about it. I was young and I had no idea what on earth to do, aside from ring the police. Basically, after keeping this for a while and refusing to let me hang up to phone some proper authorities, I heard laughing in the background and then an, "Oh, she fell for it?" or equivalent. At which point I hung up, burst into tears, and decided in that very moment that we were no longer friends. I think the last thing I said to her was F off when she tried to text or call me, and I haven't spoken to her since. Turns out she had actually lied to me about most of the things she told me about herself, including her name, and had a lot of issues. I'm glad I got out of that friendship when I did, but it gave me quite a few trust issues for a while. Well, you dodged a pathologically lying bullet right there. Story 4. Right before I turned 3, my uncle thought it would be funny to call my name while I was playing, and as I turned to see what he wanted, he threw a wooden puzzle piece at me like a Chinese star. Well, it hit my eye and caused a cataract. In 1982, doctors were more like freaking barbarians, so I have an eye there, but it's messed up since they have to remove something. Plus, I'm blind in the eye. I got a lazy eye because, hey, it's not being used, and people made fun of me through all of my school life. I also developed secondary glaucoma from the trauma and had to have multiple operations to deal with that. Luckily, I had insurance, but I don't know because no one wants to hire someone they're too afraid to look in the face, And the one employer I have, who hired me before they actually saw me, I work from home, got rid of their health insurance benefits 4 years ago, as well as cutting my salary 25% a year ago. I've used up all my savings and keep getting deeper in debt, putting things like electricity payments on credit. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I hate my life. And all because of a stupid freaking uncle who thought it would be funny to throw something sharp at me when I was young. If you think that's bad, my actual home life was even worse. But for another time. Story 5. Got suspended from school late last year for something really stupid and embarrassing, forcing me to put up with kids pestering me for the reason behind my suspension for the last 4 weeks of class. Fast forward a month to the class trip to DC and everyone's forgotten, or so I thought. One night I say something about wanting sunflower seeds and one of the other guys tells me he has some in his room. I follow him and he tells me they're on the far side of the room behind the bed in his bag. I get over there and there's no bag. I look up and see him and 4 other guys, all people I know from when I played football, standing between me and the doorway. Guy number 1 starts to say, "So, Tanzer Barbarian, why did you get suspended?" I lunge for the door, but he grabs me. I kicked out of his leg and another guy tackled me. About 15 minutes of struggling ensues with them periodically pinning me down and trying to force me to tell them the reason behind my suspension. I then made it very clear that if they did not let me go, I was going to rain hell on them. Guy number 1 tried to grab for my arm, so I twisted it behind him and pushed him. Somebody else ran at me, so I kicked him and sent him flying over. He didn't get back up. A third guy started moving toward me, so I released number 1's arm and put him in a rear chokehold. They pulled me off him one more time and sat on me as to keep me from moving at all, but then someone, probably a chaperone, knocked on the door and said we were leaving in 5 minutes. They got off me and I immediately ran for the door. I went into my room and spent the next 15 minutes crying my eyes out because not only had I been utterly betrayed by people I considered to be my friends, but I'd also been near powerless to defend myself. I felt so alone and emasculated. I just couldn't stand it. Later I found out that I injured them pretty badly. They wore long sleeves for the rest of the trip to hide the bruises. I still don't speak with any of them. Why the hell would you feel the need to force someone to tell you about the hardest time of their lives by roughing them up? What kind of self-entitled jerk would do that? Anyway, I didn't really get into why I got suspended. I'll give you the basics. It's going to seem very anticlimactic compared to what you guys have imagined, but please understand that it was an extremely trying time for both me and my family. I got to a small private school in the Southwest that is famous for both its unique approach to education and its successful athletic program. I've always been aware of the special treatment afforded to athletes. Heck, I was one. Last year I became what I thought was good friends with the equipment manager for one of the athletic teams. He told me about how the coaches were paying the players tuition and even outright paying them upwards of $500 a month. Everyone knew about the under-the-table sponsorships with big brand names that provided thousands of dollars worth of equipment. But this is the first I'd heard about paychecks and the like. I didn't like it at all, but I knew it was none of my business, so I left well enough alone. Again, the story is much more drawn out than this, but for the sake of time, I'm shorting it to the highlights. Fast forward a few months and I'm having a hard time in school. I'm failing 2 classes and on the verge of a third, while all I hear from the student athletes is how they're so glad they were able to cheat off each other or get the answers from their coach or get the teacher to change their grade. I could go into great detail on all the ways they avoided doing any work of any kind and yet still managed to get A's in all their classes. But that's not the point. My parents were ready to pull me out of the school because of the mediocre grades I was busting my bum to get, while these dumb sacks of crap were getting perfect grades handed to them on a silver platter simply because they could run faster and jump higher than I could. I had never felt so defeated in my life. I talked it over with my friend and decided to write an anonymous letter to the administration, telling them that if they didn't clean things up soon, I would report them to the athletics or academic association they're part of. No names for sake of privacy. I made a fake email account, wrote out a strongly worded email, and gave the login info to a different friend I knew I could trust, and it was not involved with the school in any way, so that if they somehow traced it, it wouldn't come back to me. It got sent, and all seemed to be going well. At the time, I was all gung-ho about it, but I never really intended to report them. That school has been good to me, even if the people in it are jerks. Time went by, and I got called into a meeting one day with the principal. She showed me the email and asked if I knew anything about it. I lied and said no, but it scared the hell out of me to think that they suspected me. I got out of the meeting and immediately asked friend number 1, equipment manager guy, if he knew anything about how they would know. He said no, but that it was probably okay. I figured all was well until my mom called and said that she'd been asked to come in for a meeting with the principal and myself, which scared me even more. I asked friend number 1 again and he said that he thought it was all over after the meeting. I never told him about the meeting. Turns out he had been called into a meeting with the principal, but assured me that he hadn't said anything. I got to my appointment with my mom and the principal and found out that they had strong reasons to suspect it was me, due to outside information. Friend number one had not only ratted me out, but also lied to my face twice. They give me the third degree about how they could get kicked out of the association because of accusations like this, and I deny having written the letter. It said that someone anonymously had emailed me and asked to forward it to the school or some stuff like that. I don't really remember. They didn't buy it, but couldn't prove me wrong either. They asked us to come in tomorrow, so I spent that night getting the scolding of my life. Both parents remind me of the numerous sacrifices they made to ensure a quality education for me, and I hit the lowest low of my life. Man, that sucks. Surely they can't suspend him for sending an email to the Athletics Association, even if they knew it was him. There has to be some kind of whistleblower protection or something. Kudos to him, though, for trying to fix such a broken system. Should have just straight up told the Athletics or Academics Association. On a lighter note, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. Story 6. I gave my friend a job who was totally broke. He has been my absolute best friend since I was in the 4th grade. I wanted him to be the best man at my wedding. He stole $2,500 from me and acted like it was no big deal. It's not fair you get all this money when I'm broke. That's what he freaking said to defend himself. This happened 2 weeks ago and I'm trying to locate the dirtbag because he's avoiding me like the plague. I will end him if I see him. It's not even about the money, it's the freaking principle. Also, I had a roommate like that in college too. He saw everything that everybody else owned as communal. For example, I bought a giant bag of rice for $50 and I thought to myself, this is the last bag of rice you will have to buy for the rest of the year. It was expensive, but it will save you money in the long run. I soon discovered that not only was he helping himself to it every single day, but he was actually offering free rice to other sleazebag people he knew. When I confronted him about it, he angrily said, "Dude, look how much of it you have. Don't be so greedy." No, you stupid jerk. I was not born with that rice. It was not a graduation gift from my parents. I worked a crappy job to be able to afford that rice. I bought it in bulk because I'm trying to save money. You sit around all day and then complain that it's not fair I have rice and you have none. You spend your money at bars every night. I spend mine on food that you have no claim to. Do you deserve for me to just hand you $20? No? Then why do you think you deserve to eat free rice from me for the rest of the year? You have 3 guitars and I have none, so I can just take one of yours, right? Don't be so greedy. Look how many you have. It was the same with everything. Beer, groceries, even leftover food that I'd cooked the night before. It didn't work out so well in the end. Story 7. There was this kid I met in kindergarten. We had a lot in common and became best friends from then until around the 7th grade when crap hit the fan. My parents were going through a divorce because he thought, and was later proven right, that my mom was cheating with my best friend's dad. Now it may seem more of a scumbag mom move, but it gets worse. It was the day before Mother's Day during our 7th grade year and we were house sitting for my aunt and uncle who were out of town. It was me, my mom, him, and his dad. We were having fun playing GTA. And I remember I forgot my Mother's Day card with my dad. So I call him and he comes over to drop it off. From the time I made that phone call to the time he got there, my mom and his dad came up with a messed up plan. He drops the cards off at 2 or 3 in the morning and leaves. At around 5 o'clock in the morning, there are cop cars in the driveway and my mom is hysterically crying. My dad did something bad to her in the middle of the night. Right around the time he dropped the card off and left immediately after. I knew he didn't do it because I was up until 5 with my friend playing GTA with the TV adjacent to the only entrance of the house, and my mom sleeping right freaking next to me. Fast forward to the trial or hearing or whatever it was, this kid is a big freaking witness. He says my dad came in, told me to go upstairs, and then went to my mom. The kid slipped up so many times and eventually screwed up so bad they knew he was lying. My dad was asked what he wanted to do after all the crap went down, and he was let go. He didn't press any charges, and we moved our bums back to Florida. I guess I should say that around 4th grade, we moved from New Jersey to Florida. At the beginning of my 7th grade year when my friend was visiting us all, the cheating accusations began. In December, my mom moved to New Jersey with my youngest brother. My dad couldn't stand being away from him, so we all moved back to New Jersey in January. Then this stuff happened and we went back to Florida. Jerk move. That was the last time I talked to him again, and it wasn't until the 10th grade that I was ever able to trust others and have friends again. Screw that kid. Nah, that was definitely a scumbag mom story. He was just a kid like you. He was probably told those things by his dad. Story 8. A roommate of mine found a sublet for his room via Kijiji for the last month of our year lease. Some random guy a few years older, I'm 23, he was 29. We hit it off. Tons of similar interests, and so I invited him to move in with my girlfriend and I for the first month in our new lease, as he still hadn't made any arrangements to find a place, and our current lease was about to expire. I figured I could use the help with rent money for the first month for the new place. There are tons of extra expenses the first month when you move, and the girlfriend and I signed another lease for a 2-bedroom for the extra space. Anyways, 1 month turns into 2 in the new place, and I have to sit him down and essentially tell him that we're going to transform his room next month and he's got to find a place. He agrees, no problems. So a week before the month end arrives and he's half-heartedly browsing Kijiji looking for spots. He looks at a few and I'm not thinking much about it, just kind of praying that he finds himself a spot. I like the guy, but the girlfriend and I really wanted privacy after several months with him bumming around. The 29th, I left for work thinking about the dreaded, "So did you get a place yet?" conversation that followed 6 p.m. Instead of coming home to my roommate, I came home to my cash drawer emptied. $2,000 in web design side project money I'd received from a few different small projects in cash. Not a ton of money, but for a guy and his girlfriend in their early 20s, that money could go a long way to student debt, credit debt, car payments, etc. He went through all of my stuff, took the cash, grabbed the single item he owned of any value, his PS3, and took a bus to God knows where. His hometown is a province away, and he's never owned a cell phone or introduced me to any of his friends. He deleted me on Facebook. The only way he seemed to communicate with anyone, and I'm yet to find someone with a related friend. I've told the proper authorities, etc., so there's not a whole lot I can do. I completely regret not putting that much money in a safer place. I really didn't believe I had to worry about someone already in my home stealing from me. I completely trusted him. Looking back, although this was just a few weeks ago, he's a loser with nothing going for him and I should have seen this coming. He was working at a call center. I went there the day after the incident and they said he didn't show for his shift. I went back a few days later and they said they hadn't seen or heard from him. All he has is a smallish amount of money to spend for a living, but the weirdest parts of the whole experience were the emotions when I was moving all his garbage out of his room and remembering all the good times playing PS3 or watching movies or just drinking beers in the balcony during the 3 months that I lived with him, being overshadowed by the robbery. I've never been as angry and sad at the same time. I'm going to find him, sooner or later. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in the video.